When my stepmother told me my father's entire fortune had been left to her instead of me, I collapsed right there in the attorney's office. 3 days later, I was sitting in a dusty storage unit, surrounded by my father's forgotten papers, discovering the web of lies that had entangled our family for decades. That's when I realized life isn't a fairy tale with guaranteed happy endings. It's a game of poker where the person sitting across from you is always hiding cards up their sleeve. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from. Because trust me, this story has more twists than a mountain road, and you'll want to be buckled in for every turn. My name is Caroline Marshall. 6 months ago, I was the daughter of billionaire real estate mogul Richard Marshall, living in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, working at my father's company, and planning my future as his heir. Today, I'm fighting to prove that the woman he married 2 years ago orchestrated the greatest theft in our family's history. The day started like any other day of mourning. Dressed in black, I arrived at Mr. Hoffman's office, Dad's attorney for over 30 years. I expected formalities, paperwork, the official transfer of assets we discussed countless times throughout my life. Dad had always been clear, everything I built is for you, Caroline. The conference room felt colder than usual. Thomas Hoffman wouldn't meet my eyes as I sat down, which should have been my first warning. My stepmother Vanessa arrived last, her black designer dress somehow making her look more like a celebrant than a widow. Let's begin, Thomas said, adjusting his glasses. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. I'll never forget the silence that followed his next words. The last will and testament of Richard Marshall, revised and signed 6 weeks before his death, leaves the entirety of his estate, including Marshall Enterprises, all properties, investments, and liquid assets, to his wife, Vanessa Marshall. The room spun. That's impossible, I whispered. Vanessa reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Her diamond bracelet, my mother's bracelet, glinted under the fluorescent lights. I know this is a shock, darling, she said, her voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy. Your father wanted to tell you himself, but his heart attack came so suddenly. He pulled my hand away. This isn't legal. Dad would never. I have video of the signing, Thomas interrupted. Your father was of sound mind. I'm sorry, Caroline. Script part separator, I left that office feeling like I'd been hit by a train. Everything I believed about my life had shattered in an instant. The 29 years I'd spent as my father's daughter and heir apparent meant nothing compared to the 2 years Vanessa had spent as his wife. The doorman at my building gave me a sympathetic nod as I stumbled through the lobby. Miss Caroline, there's a package for you. He handed me a small box with my father's handwriting on it. I tore it open in the elevator. Inside was a safety deposit box key and a note, for when I'm gone. Trust no one. Not even Thomas. That night, I couldn't sleep. Why would Dad revise his will without telling me? Why would he warn me about Thomas, his most trusted advisor? None of it made sense. The next morning, I went to the bank. The safety deposit box contained 3 things, an old leather journal, a flash drive, and a photograph of my father with a man I didn't recognize. The journal was my father's. The final entry was dated 3 days before he died. Vanessa found the documents. God help me if she tells Marcus. I need to warn Caroline. Who was Marcus? Why would my father fear Vanessa finding documents? I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It contained hundreds of files, financial records, emails, surveillance photos. As I scrolled through them, my hands began to shake. There were transfers to offshore accounts, contracts with names blacked out, and communications with someone called M about a replacement will. My phone rang. Unknown caller. Caroline. The voice was unfamiliar, male, low. Don't trust Hoffman. He's in on it. Check the storage unit on East 61st, Unit 342. The code is your mother's birthday. Who is this? I demanded. A friend of your father's. They're watching you now. Be careful. The line went dead. Script part separator, I couldn't wait until morning. I grabbed my coat and called an Uber. The storage facility was in a part of town I rarely visited, industrial, gritty, far from the polished Manhattan I knew. The night guard barely looked up from his magazine as I passed. Unit 342 was at the end of a dimly lit corridor. My mother's birthday, July 15th, 62. The padlock clicked open. The smell hit me first. Old paper, dust, and something else. My father's cologne. The unit was filled with filing cabinets, boxes stacked to the ceiling, a desk with an old computer. This wasn't just storage, it was an office. A secret office. I spent hours there that night, digging through decades of my father's hidden life. Tax documents showing properties I'd never heard of. Correspondence with business partners whose names never appeared in company records. Photos of my father with politicians who publicly opposed his projects. But the most shocking discovery came when I found a folder labeled Vanessa, background. Inside were surveillance photos of my stepmother from before she met my father. Reports from private investigators. A marriage certificate showing she had been married before, to Marcus Blackwell. The name from my father's journal. My hands trembled as I opened another file. Blackwell Enterprises, hostile takeover attempt. Newspaper clippings from 15 years earlier showed my father standing victorious outside a courthouse. The headline read, Marshall crushes Blackwell's empire. The pieces were falling into place. Vanessa wasn't just a gold digger who'd seduced my aging father. She was revenge personified, Marcus Blackwell's ex-wife, planted in my father's life to destroy everything he'd built and everyone he loved. I sat on the dusty floor, surrounded by the truth, and felt something shift inside me. The grief that had paralyzed me since Dad's death transformed into something harder, colder, more useful. They think I'm just the spoiled daughter, I whispered to the empty room. They have no idea what I'm capable of. I took out my phone and made a call to the one person who might help me, my father's former security chief, James Reynolds. Dad had fired him 6 months earlier, shortly after marrying Vanessa. Now I understood why. James. It's Caroline Marshall. We need to talk about my father. And about Marcus Blackwell. Script part separator, The diner where I met James looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 1970s. He was already waiting in a booth at the back, eyes constantly scanning the door. You look like hell, he said when I sat down. Good to see you too. I pushed the folder across the table. Tell me about Marcus Blackwell. James opened the folder and nodded slowly. So you found it. Your dad would be proud. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Richard wanted you protected. Blackwell swore revenge after your father took his company. Said he'd destroy everything Richard loved. James leaned forward. When Vanessa appeared in your father's life, I recognized her from the old surveillance files. I tried to warn him. And he fired you. Love makes fools of wise men. James sipped his coffee. 2 weeks after I was gone, your father started getting sick. My blonde cold. You think she poisoned him? The heart attack was too convenient. But we can't prove anything without an exhumation. So what can we do? The will. If we can prove it was forged or that your father was coerced. Thomas Hoffman said there's video of Dad signing it. James smiled grimly. Videos can be manipulated. Witnesses can lie. But Hoffman's the key. He's been Blackwell's man all along. My father's most trusted attorney was working for his enemy? De betrayal kutidip. Ferties of access to every Marshall business secret. Perfect placement. James pulled out his phone. I still have contacts in security. We've been watching Hoffman. He showed me photos of Thomas meeting with a tall, silver-haired man. That's Marcus Blackwell, James confirmed. Taken 3 days after your father died. My mind was racing. The reading of the will is in 2 weeks. That's when Vanessa officially takes control of everything. Then we have 2 weeks to gather evidence and build a case. James looked me straight in the eyes. But Caroline, these people are dangerous. Your father likely discovered what they were planning, and it got him killed. I thought about the empire my father had built from nothing. About the promises he'd made me. About the justice he deserved. I don't care how dangerous they are, I said. They messed with the wrong family. Script part separator, I spent the next 3 days poring over every document from the storage unit. The picture was becoming clearer, but we needed solid proof. The forged will was our target, but without access to the original or the video of the signing, we were stuck. We need someone on the inside, I told James over our secure line. We'd switched to burner phones after noticing suspicious cars parked outside my building. Hoffman's assistant, James suggested. Megan's been with him for 5 years. She might know something. Approaching Megan was risky, but we were running out of time. I arranged to accidentally bump into her at her favorite coffee shop. She seemed nervous when she recognized me. I heard what happened with the will, she said, eyes darting around. It's not right. Do you know something, Megan? She lowered her voice. The video of your father signing. Mr. Hoffman recorded it in the office, but... She hesitated. Your father wasn't well that day. He could barely hold the pen. Do you have a copy of the video? No, but I know where it's stored. And there's something else. She slid a piece of paper across the table. This is the IP address that accessed our system the night before. Someone modified files remotely. This was it, our first real evidence of tampering. I immediately called the forensic tech specialist James had recommended. This is good, Alexei said, examining Megan's information. I can trace this back to the source. But we need more, the actual video, access to Hoffman's system. Leave that to me, James said. His expression had turned grim. There's something else you should know, Caroline. I had your father's medical records reviewed by a specialist. The pattern of symptoms before his death is consistent with thallium poisoning, virtually undetectable unless specifically tested for. I felt sick. She murdered him. And now she's living in his house, wearing your mother's jewelry, preparing to take over his company. James put his hand on my shoulder. The will reading is in 10 days. Whatever we do, it has to happen before then. The pieces were falling into place, but time was running out. Blackwell, Vanessa, and Hoffman had spent years planning this. We had days to stop them. Call Alexei, I told James. Tonight, we're breaking into Hoffman's office. Script part separator, The office break-in was riskier than anything I'd ever done. James disabled the security cameras while Alexei and I slipped through the back entrance of Hoffman's law firm using the keycard Megan had accidentally left in the coffee shop. We have 20 minutes before the security loop resets, James warned through my earpiece. Get what you need and get out. Hoffman's office was immaculate, not a paper out of place. While Alexei worked on accessing the computer, I searched through the filing cabinets. Nothing about my father's will was where it should be. Caroline, check behind the painting, Alexei whispered. Old-school lawyers love wall safes. Sure enough, behind a bland landscape painting was a digital safe. I tried my father's birthday. Nothing. Then my mother's. Nothing. Try October 28th, 04, Alexei suggested. The day your father defeated Blackwell in court. The safe clicked open. Inside was a single USB drive labeled R.M. Final Testament. I'm in his email, Alexei announced. There's correspondence with Blackwell dating back 5 years. They were planning this before your father even met Vanessa. I was downloading the files when Alexei suddenly froze. Someone just accessed the system remotely, he hissed. They know we're here. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I see you found our little insurance policy. You're playing a dangerous game, Caroline. The alarm suddenly blared through the building. Abort. James shouted in my earpiece. Get out now. We barely made it to the car before security flooded the building. As James sped away, I clutched the USB drive that might save my father's legacy. They're following us, Alexei said, looking back at the black SUV gaining on us. Hold on, James growled, making a sudden turn down an alley. The chase ended when James pulled a maneuver that sent our pursuers crashing into a fire hydrant. We were safe, but one thing was clear, they were no longer underestimating me. Script part separator, Back at our safe house, a run-down apartment James kept under a different name, we examined what we'd stolen. The USB drive contained the original video of my father signing the will, and it confirmed what Megan had said. Dad looked frail, confused. His hand shook as he signed. Look at his eyes, I said, pausing the video. They're dilated. That's not normal. Alexei was reviewing the emails we'd downloaded. These messages between Hoffman and Blackwell, they discussed dosages. Thallium sulfate. Small amounts, administered over months. My stomach churned. They were poisoning him slowly. And look at this, Alexei continued. Drafts of the will. Multiple versions, each giving Vanessa more control. The final one was created just 2 days before your father signed it. We have enough to go to the police, I said. James shook his head. Blackwell has connections in the department. We need to be smarter. My phone rang. Vanessa. I answered on speaker. Caroline, darling. I've been worried about you. Her voice was honey-sweet poison. The reading is in a week. I hope you'll be there to support the transition. Wouldn't miss it for the world, I replied, forcing calm into my voice. Wonderful. Oh, and Caroline. Breaking into Thomas's office was foolish. Whatever you think you found won't help you. Your father made his choice. Did he choose to be poisoned too? I shot back. A pause. You're upset, clearly. But throwing around accusations will only damage your reputation. The board already thinks you're unstable. After she hung up, James looked grim. She's preparing the ground, making you look crazy before you can accuse her. Then we need to strike first, I said. Not through the police. Through the one thing Blackwell and Vanessa care about more than money. Which is their reputation. We need to set a trap, and we need them to walk right into it. Script part separator ===. I called an emergency meeting with my new team, James, Alexei, and now Megan, who decided to help us after seeing the evidence. We gathered in James' apartment, surrounded by files and laptops. The reading of the will is in 5 days, I said. That's when Vanessa and Blackwell plan to take everything public, announce the transition, introduce him as her business consultant. James nodded. According to my sources, they've already scheduled a press conference for immediately after the reading. That's our moment, I said. We need to turn their victory announcement into their public downfall. How? Megan asked. I opened my laptop. I've been going through Dad's hidden files. He was suspicious of Vanessa months ago and began gathering his own evidence. I pulled up financial records. These show Hoffman transferring company funds to shell corporations owned by Blackwell. Alexei whistled. Embezzlement on top of everything else. And this, I continued, showing them a chemical analysis report, is from Dad's coffee cup. He was testing his own drinks. High levels of thallium. So he knew, James said quietly. He was building a case. But then they found out. I took a deep breath. Here's what we're going to do. Vanessa expects me at the will reading. I'll be there, with all of our evidence ready to go. That's too dangerous, James objected. They could hurt you. Not in a room full of witnesses and with what I've arranged. I smiled grimly. I've invited the board of directors, Dad's closest friends, and, most importantly, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. They'll never let a reporter in, Megan said. They won't know until it's too late. She's posing as my emotional support person. I leaned forward. But we need one more piece of evidence that even Blackwell can't wiggle out of. His confession, Alexei guessed. I nodded. And I know exactly how to get it. Script part separator ===. The next 4 days passed in a blur of preparation and increasing danger. Someone broke into my apartment, though nothing appeared stolen. James's car was tampered with, brake lines cut. We were getting closer, and they were getting desperate. The morning before the will reading, I met Marcus Blackwell face to face for the first time. He was waiting beside my car in the parking garage. Ms. Marshall, he said, his voice smoother than I expected. I thought it was time we met. I stood my ground, though my heart hammered in my chest. Marcus Blackwell. The man who's been trying to destroy my family for 15 years. He smiled, showing perfect teeth. Your father destroyed himself. I merely accelerated the process. By sending Vanessa to poison him? Accusations without evidence are just stories, Ms. Marshall. He stepped closer. Tomorrow, you will sit quietly as Thomas reads the will. You will accept your father's decision with grace. Then you will disappear. Or what? Or what happened to your father will seem merciful compared to what happens to you. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. That's exactly what I needed. His face hardened as he realized I'd recorded our conversation. This changes nothing, he hissed. One word against mine. And after tomorrow, I'll own every judge in this city. As he walked away, I called James. It worked. He threatened me directly. Did you get it recorded clearly? Every word. But it's still not enough for a confession of murder. Then we stick to the plan. The final trap. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would determine everything, whether my father's killer would triumph or face justice. Whether the Marshall name would continue or be erased. Script part separator ===. I arrived at Hoffman's office an hour early. The receptionist directed me to the conference room where my father's empire would be decided. I wasn't surprised to find Vanessa already there, dressed in black Chanel, examining documents with Thomas. Caroline, darling. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, not bothering to rise. I wouldn't miss it, I replied, sitting directly across from her. Dad would want me here. Thomas shuffled papers nervously. The others should be arriving soon. Board members, executives, and Mr. Blackwell? I asked innocently. The silence was telling. Thomas recovered first. Marcus is merely advising Vanessa on transition matters. Of course. I placed my phone face down on the table. We all need advisors we can trust. People began filing in, Dad's executive team, looking uncomfortable, board members eyeing me with pity, my emotional support person Jennifer from the Wall Street Journal, and finally, Marcus Blackwell himself, striding in like he already owned the place. Let's begin, Thomas said once everyone was seated. He opened the leather portfolio containing my father's fraudulent will. As you know, Richard Marshall revised his testament shortly before his untimely passing. I watched Vanessa's face as Thomas read the will. The slight smile, the gleam of triumph in her eyes as each asset, the company, the properties, the investments, was formally transferred to her name. And to my daughter, Caroline, Thomas concluded, I leave my collection of first edition books and the sum of $1 million. Murmurs spread around the table. A pittance compared to the billions Vanessa had just inherited. If anyone has questions, Thomas said, now is. I have a question, I interrupted, standing slowly. Did my father ever mention being poisoned to death? Script part separator ===. The room went silent. Thomas's face drained of color while Vanessa's eyes narrowed dangerously. Caroline, Thomas began, grief can cause us to imagine. I'm not imagining anything, I said, sliding copies of the toxicology report across the table. My father was being poisoned with thallium for months. Small doses in his coffee, his food. The board members picked up the papers, their expressions shifting from skepticism to horror. Vanessa laughed, a brittle, desperate sound. This is absurd. Richard died of a heart attack. The doctors confirmed it. Thallium causes heart failure, I replied calmly. And we have evidence of who administered it. I nodded to James, who stood by the door. He pressed a button, and the large screen on the wall flickered to life. The video showed kitchen surveillance footage from my father's house. Vanessa opening a small vial, dripping liquid into my father's coffee cup. Date stamped 2 days before his death. That's medication. For his heart. Vanessa sputtered, standing up so quickly her chair tipped backward. Marcus Blackwell hadn't moved, his face a mask of controlled rage. This proves nothing. I turned to face him directly. Maybe this will help. I played the recording of our garage confrontation. His voice filled the room. Your father destroyed himself. I merely accelerated the process. Gasps echoed around the table. The journalist was frantically taking notes. And then there's this, I continued, motioning to Alexei, who distributed more documents. Financial records showing how Mr. Hoffman has been transferring company assets to shell corporations owned by Mr. Blackwell for the past year. Thomas Hoffman jumped to his feet. This meeting is over. Everyone out. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway, Nobody's going anywhere. Detective Rivera stepped into the room, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Marcus Blackwell, Vanessa Marshall, Thomas Hoffman, you're under arrest for the murder of Richard Marshall and conspiracy to commit fraud. Script part separator, As the officers moved forward with handcuffs, Vanessa lunged across the table at me. Her perfectly manicured nails missed my face by inches as James pulled me backward. "You stupid girl!" she shrieked. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" Marcus remained eerily calm as the officer cuffed him. "This is a minor inconvenience, Caroline."
We weder diverse storms.
"Not like this one," I replied. "The FBI has been investigating your offshore accounts for months. Dad's evidence was the missing piece they needed." Thomas Hoffman collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. Marcus promised no one would get hurt. "It was just business. Just the company. Just business." I stepped toward him. "You betrayed a man who trusted you for 30 years. Who made you wealthy. Who considered you family." The officers led the 3 of them toward the door, but I wasn't finished. I turned to the shell-shocked board members and executives. My father built Marshall Enterprises from nothing. He wasn't perfect, but he created something that mattered. These people, I gestured to the handcuffed trio, tried to steal it through murder and fraud. They failed. Jennifer from the Wall Street Journal approached me. "Ms. Marshall, what happens to the company now?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "According to my father's real will, the one we found in his secret safe at home, I'm the majority shareholder. And my first act will be a complete audit of every division, every contract, and every executive who might have been complicit in this conspiracy." As the room erupted in chaos, board members protesting their innocence, executives making calls to their attorneys, I felt a strange sense of peace. Dad would be proud. Script part separator, The next few weeks were a whirlwind of depositions, emergency board meetings, and damage control. The story broke in every major newspaper. Marshall heiress unmasks murderous plot. The company stock took a hit, then rebounded when I announced a restructuring plan. Vanessa, Marcus, and Thomas were denied bail. The evidence against them was overwhelming, especially after the FBI raided Blackwell's offices and found detailed records of their scheme dating back 5 years. I moved back into my father's mansion, though sleeping there was difficult at first. Every room held memories, both good and painful. The master bedroom remained locked. I wasn't ready to enter the space where Vanessa had lived with my father. James became my head of security, Alexei our new technology officer, and Megan my personal assistant. People I could trust were rare and valuable. One evening, as we sat in Dad's study reviewing company reports, James handed me a small box. "Found this in Vanessa's things when we were clearing out her closet," he said. "Thought you might want it." Inside was my mother's sapphire necklace, the one Dad had given her on their 10th anniversary. I thought Vanessa had sold it months ago. "Thank you," I whispered, clutching it tightly. The preliminary hearing was set for the following month. My testimony would be crucial, the prosecutor had explained. But facing my father's killers across a courtroom would require strength I wasn't sure I possessed. "Well, ele behead," James assured me, saying my doubt. "Your father faced down Blackwell once before. Now you'll finish what he started." That night, I dreamed of Dad for the first time since his death. Not lying in a hospital bed, pale and still, but standing in his office, smiling proudly. When I woke, I felt his presence somehow, a quiet certainty that justice would prevail. DPS Forward voo do TBIs. Marshall Enterprises had been wounded by scandal, and rebuilding trust would take time. But Dad had taught me well. Strength wasn't about never falling, it was about rising every time you fell. The courtroom fell silent as I finished my testimony. 3 months of legal battles had led to this moment, the final day of the trial. Vanessa's face had hardened into a mask of hatred. Marcus Blackwell maintained his cold composure, but his eyes betrayed his fury. Thomas Hoffman simply looked defeated. "The jury will now deliberate," announced Judge Perkins. "Court is adjourned until they reach a verdict." I didn't have to wait long. By evening, my phone rang with news that the jury had returned. James drove me back to the courthouse where reporters crowded the steps. Guilty on all counts, the jury foreman declared. The sentencing came a week later, life imprisonment without parole for Marcus and Vanessa. 15 years for Thomas, who had finally cooperated with prosecutors. As I left the courthouse for the last time, a reporter asked how I felt. "Justice doesn't bring my father back," I replied. "But it honors his legacy." 6 months later, Marshall Enterprises had not only recovered but was thriving under my leadership. The board that had once pitted me now respected me. The company that should have been mine all along was finally where it belonged. One quiet evening, I visited my father's grave with a bouquet of his favorite lilies. "We did it, Dad," I whispered, placing my hand on the cold marble. "They thought I was just your spoiled daughter. They never saw me coming." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, I could almost hear his reply. "I always knew you were stronger than anyone realized." As I walked away, I realized the greatest inheritance my father had left me wasn't his fortune or his company. It was the strength to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. And now, I stand at the helm of everything he built, wiser, stronger, and forever vigilant. Because some inheritances aren't counted in dollars and cents, but in the truth that runs through our veins and the justice we demand from this world.